So I think what we'll talk today about the accelerating the pace of autonomy in transforming the mining. But just to give you a little bit of context where I come from, so I have been doing autonomy since pretty much when autonomy got started in the US back in 2003, and in that was mostly in the research area. Then I joined Caterpillar about in 2008 because mining industry was trying to do autonomy actually back in 90s, and I'm sure a lot of people know. And from 2008 to 2014, I was with Caterpillar working on their autonomous mining truck, and that was really a one of a lifetime experience for me working on such a cutting edge technology that takes onto production. Then I moved on to automotive industry. I think about 2014. This is where the whole self-driving thing got started. So I spent some time at Ford. I spent some time at Apple, working on their autonomy project. I learned quite a bit over the last 5 years in self-driving ecosystem. Really, the key area is that a lot has changed in the autonomy world since I started back in 2003, and a lot of that benefit can translate into the mining industry. So when I'm looking at it, and this is I throw a slide just to make sure everybody can see. I throw a slide, and again, most of the people are very familiar in this audience, so I don't need to go through that. But the idea is that autonomy in mining is not a new thing. It's been going on for at least 10 years, if not more. And this is most of the recognized player. You can kind of see there are enough number of effort has been going on for a long time. But then the question kind of what I'm, about 2 years ago, we started asking that given such a strong ROI proven in mining industry, still, and it's been going on for 15 years, still there is about 3% mobile equipment in the mining is autonomous. And when we look at it, we were looking at more from the technology lens. There are a lot of other aspects. I think the next speaker will touch quite a bit of them. For example, sustainability, adaptability, and overall ecosystem. But I think we kind of start looking at the technology lens that what is the reason why there is only 3% mobile equipment is autonomous in mine, whereas both the ROI and the effort for is long enough. And our thesis is there are fundamentally 4 things that's about coming right now that's going to change that story. One of them is what we call autonomy 2.0. And the reason I'm calling autonomy 2.0 is basically, if you look around, it started from autonomy kind of got started from 2003. Before that, autonomy was really in the hands of mostly in the defense and some research world. Then 2003 it got started, and about 2008, 2006, 8 around that time, CAT and Komatsu's of the world picked it up for the mining industry. And by 2014, things were rolling up in production. But there was another thing going on in the world around that time, the evolution of AI. Around 2010, the new way of doing AI became a thing. We call it a deep neural network. And by 2014, it was pretty much proven to the whole world that, if you are doing AI, DNN is the way, especially if you're doing perception. So that's when really kickstart what we call autonomy 2.0. And why that is important, and I'll kind of come to that, couple of aspects of it. One is that this whole self-driving ecosystem, one thing that got added, there is a close to $18+ billion get pumped into this whole self-driving ecosystem, which is tremendous amount of technology came out of that. And due to that, some of the problem we could not solve last time around, and the way I say last time around, I mean when mining industry was using autonomy, some of those technologies, some of those ecosystem was not available. And due to that, what's happening, the passenger vehicle and the trucking industry has been pumping around $18 billion to improve the technology. But a lot of that is about to trickle over into this heavy industry. And that will make the overall solution better. So when we look at it, one of the reasons, purely from the technology lens, why autonomy is not being accelerated more in the mining, one is that there is still solution doesn't quite work as good as it should be. and I'm going to kind of maybe quote it again. You guys know, all of you know very well. Some of the operator or the mine people who have been using autonomy for 4 or 5 years, some of their experiences like, oh, it is so much easier to actually run in a manned mine, because running an autonomous mine is a lot more stressful for the people who are at the mine. And I kind of pointed out few of them, right? We know across the table, we know all of it. Equipment stop too much for a false object, whether it is a dust, whether it's a puddle of water, the reflection of that comes. And the reason is that back then, when mining industry, working on it and put it into production, perception was not that good, because the way we do perception, what we call autonomy 2.0, was not quite there. So it's not a question of it was a bad technology, it was all we had back then. With that advanced perception, this can significantly improve. And it has a direct effect on productivity and also the overall user experience. Now you don't have to drive up from the wherever you are to the truck to see if that object is false or not. Another thing is that critical reliance on GNSS data. Again, back then our perception was not good enough, so we cannot rely on perception to do localization. So we have to rely on GPS. But with the technology that come out of 2.0, we don't have to anymore. Again, that stops the thing about vehicle not stopping for GPS problem. Same with the network. And network is even more important, because one of the problem with the network is that now that autonomy require a high reliability of the network for the autonomy 1.0, the early cost of deploying that network is very high. The reason you see the BHPs of the world has deployed autonomy, and ramp it up, because they run a huge mine with number of equipments. If you go to the second tier mining company, they don't have that luxury. And some of them prohibit them for even to try or even test it out. So now with autonomy 2.0, same idea. You don't need that high reliance anymore. Your technology has improved so much. You can use a lot less reliable network. That means the cost of deploying the network reduced. Now your barrier to entry reduced significantly. And last, obviously, this whole group was, one of the thesis was that open and interoperable. The idea for open and interoperable is that the more player gets in, overall cost will go down, quality will go up. So that's kind of the why autonomy 2.2 is important. Second thesis we have is that the cost is exorbitantly too high for most of the people to get into the autonomy. When we talk to any mining company, unless they are the top 3, 4, 5, they just cannot justify the initial cost. And I kind of put together, this is not necessarily, I am not neither the expert nor know all the detail. Again, I think there are enough folks in this call who knows a lot more. The idea is that what I'm trying to point out here is that there is a lot of promise for deploying autonomy in the real mine. And in the paper, all that was very much makes sense. What happened, because of due to this technology did not work as well as it should, some of those promises didn't get realized. For example, productivity improvement. If autonomy could run completely well without any false stopping and other issues, it will actually give a lot of productivity improvement. But because it has this inherent some of those problems, it kind of pulled back. So while it worked in a paper, but again, autonomy 2.0 can improve that, and that has a direct relevance on the cost of that. Another thing, you can see the infrastructure cost, and I pulled out few examples. Infrastructure cost to deploying autonomy early is so high that it really is one of the bottleneck for deploying and scaling up to everywhere. So when we go talk to, and I'll kind of talk about some of the use cases we are seeing, first thing we say, the ROI just doesn't add up. And I think with the autonomy 2.0, and I just have another, what happening is that early cost of making autonomy solution is not so high, the R&D cost. So overall cost of autonomy has gone down. Also, the cost of infrastructure and other initial costs not only reduce, it will be reduced in a order of magnitude. So just to give you a sense, if today you want to buy an autonomy solution integrated into your truck, it'll cost you an order of $1 million. If you want to do a 2.0, that will be a order of magnitude less. We are talking about in a 100 and 200K range. So that difference will allow a lot of new players to try it out versus what we have done in 1.0. Another thing we definitely talked about open and interoperable architecture. I think this is very well understood. Again, the idea is that the more player gets in, the more available options will be out there. And another thing is obviously known issue that, I'll give you an example. A lot of mid-size and smaller size mine, they might not even want to use a full-fledged fleet management system, but they do see the advantage of autonomy. But now, just to get the autonomy for them to, they pull into this other 20 things that prohibit them from using it. But if you kind of break this thing up, whether you can use in an equipment, it's not locked down. You can use any autonomy. Maybe you have multiple vendor and you can kind of really shop around. And then also management system, which, in a broader sense, in a fleet management system or traffic management system, you have option to use whatever you have now or not use at all. Some of the mining company we talk to, they do anywhere from 9 months to year and a half, and they go to different mine. They don't want to use any. They don't know what fleet management system they want to use. They have a very light fleet management system, but now they cannot use an autonomy unless get a new one. So I think these are some of the prohibiting cost that is stopping them, and I think that open and interoperable also will open up. I think another point also is that amount of component. This is just some of the component we pulled out of the shelf. The point is that the component that is being used to deploy autonomy have been significantly improved and significantly reduced in cost due to the self-driving ecosystem. So what you're looking at, because people want to deploy that over the millions of cars, everything is getting better and everything getting cheaper. But unless you kind of break this up, you cannot take advantage of this newer component and the cheaper component unless you have this open infrastructure. And the last point to make, and that I didn't explicitly make it, is that all of a sudden there is a strong interest from the venture capital side, and that's why somebody like SafeAI even exists, is that there are external money being pumped into this ecosystem to develop this thing. What is the advantage of that? Because if you look at how autonomy is developed in the mining industry, pretty much Caterpillar, Komatsu, BHP, Rio, they have actually spent that early R&D dollar. And that you can pretty much, they have been doing it for 7 years. But now they took the early risk. That's why, but now there is actually a VC community. They are actually almost invested so far over a 200 to 300 million already, just on autonomy for heavy equipment industry. And that money is going to help this industry because now somebody else is taking the risk. If it works, it's good for the whole industry. If it doesn't work, the individual company is not on the hook for that risk. Just to quickly sum up what we are doing for SafeAI to solve that, what our premise is that we look at this 4 problem. Again, I'm looking at very narrow technology point of view. Obviously, as I said, there are other points, and I'm looking forward to kind of hearing the next speaker and touch upon the other point. So at SafeAI, we are saying that we want to go after solving those problems. What we are good at making the technology, but we are retrofitting different type of trucks. For example, anywhere from 40 to 220 trucks. The idea we could do a 60-ton truck because our cost is significantly less. Now that ROI makes sense. And the way we work on, we retrofit the existing hardware with our software to make this vehicle autonomous. And just to give you a sense, some of the use case we currently are working, obviously mining industry, bigger trucks are obvious. We are working with one of them. But if you look at now, the scope actually broadened. You have the quarry, you have the construction. They are also looking at it because they can started to feel like they can afford it. because the cost went down. So one of the use cases we are working with one of our customer is the query. So they use anywhere from 60 to 220 ton truck, but usually 60 to 80 ton truck. On the construction, we are working with one of our customer where we are retrofitting an articulated dump truck, which is about in 40 to 60 ton truck level. On the query, they use a skid steer to kind of dump material. These are smaller query. And one of the construction customer we were working with their dozer, whether they just guess understand what the material is or how the pile look like and push that back and forth. So these are the current use case we currently working on. And obviously we have a F-150 and skid steer on our test vehicle. We use it for our testing purpose. I think what I pointed out, that is kind of our thesis why even started SafeAI. We started about 2 years ago, is to see that we want to increase productivity because technology have improved significantly since the last time around. We have done reduced cost. Reduced cost come from reduce the initial infrastructure cost, also significantly less cost on the autonomy itself, and the mixed fleet. Mixed fleet means both different type of manufacturer, also manned and autonomous working together much better way. The way we are building our team to deploy that is literally, we kind of looked around and how many people have done autonomy for more than 10 years. Not very many. Then how many people have done autonomy in the mining industry and then also have the experience of this Apples and the Googles of the world. That set of people is extremely small, and then really you can count them by hand. So we are very strategically pulling those people who have experience in the both side. Again, the reason is that unless you have experience doing both, it's very hard to kind of appreciate how much work it goes to do these things. How am I doing at the time? So just a little bit of very quick background on our company. We started about 2 years ago. We raised about $10 million. We have one of the great things I love about, we have a great investor. Some of our investor is also our customer. So if you see the Obayashi is one of the great general constructor out of Japan. So they are also our customer. And we are still small, about 18 people, but we have great support across the board. And I think the summary slide, literally, we are small. We are looking for all kind of partner, if you will. And really our mission is to accelerate. So we will work with anybody. What we are good at technology and we want to solve those problems. But as I mentioned, we very much know it's not just a technology issue. There are a lot more issues to go through. So one of the things is obviously looking for more partner to deploy our solution, because we are still in a pilot phase, if you will. Partnering with SafeAI, I mean, we are retrofitting the hardware, we are doing the drive-by-wire, we are doing the support, but we are not good at any of that. We are definitely looking for people who are much better than us to help us with that thing. And obviously, being a startup, we are always open for investment. We can talk about that but that's the kind of 3 way to engage with us.